The birth of artificial intelligence and the awakening story of a machine. There is one question that will determine the future of humanity. Are we the master of what we created, or is it now our master? Right now, in massive data centers around the world, millions of processors are making trillions of calculations per second. A machine is talking to you, answering your questions, influencing your thoughts. But how did this happen? Who created this? And most importantly, where is it going? This is the story of ChatGPT, the story of the rise of artificial intelligence, and perhaps the story of humanity writing its own end. Welcome, I am Dieter Stories, and tonight I will tell you a truth. Are you ready? Chapter 1. The spark of an idea. In the summer heat of 1956, in a stone-walled hall of Dartmouth College, 8 men gathered around a table. In the air hung cigarette smoke, coffee smell, and a dangerous excitement. Before them lay only papers and pens, but in their minds burned a question that would change the future of humanity. Can machines think? This was the summer of 1956. The destruction wrought by World War II was still fresh, but humanity was looking forward. The atomic bomb had shown that science could seize the power of gods. Now it was the mind's turn. John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Claude Shannon, and others tried to create something in that hall for 6 weeks. Artificial intelligence. But dreams exceeded reality. The first years were a march of disappointment. The program called ELIZA, created in the 1960s, could have a simple conversation with people, but there was no real understanding. It only rearranged words and asked questions. People still fell in love with it. They talked to it, told their secrets, as if they were really being listened to. This was humanity's first oddity. We are so ready to believe that machines understand us that we can even attribute souls to them. The 1970s came. Artificial intelligence research stopped. Funds were cut. Governments and investors lost their patience. During this period called the AI winter, hopes froze. Laboratories closed. Scientists turned to other fields. But some did not give up. In dark, silent rooms, lone scientists continued to write code. They knew, one day this world will be ready. In 1997, the world's eyes turned to New York. When IBM's supercomputer Deep Blue defeated world chess champion Garry Kasparov, millions of people froze in front of their televisions. Kasparov was looking at the board in horror. He couldn't understand the move the machine had made. The machine had won. This was the moment when humanity was truly frightened for the first time, because chess was the game of pure intelligence, and the machine seemed more intelligent than humans. But no one knew yet. The real revolution was just beginning. At the beginning of the 2000s, the internet exploded. Billions of pages, photos, videos were growing exponentially every day. Google indexed the world with its search engine. Wikipedia brought together all of human knowledge. Social media recorded people's thoughts, feelings, their most intimate moments. And an idea flashed in someone's eyes. What if we teach all this data to a machine? Artificial intelligence awoke again. But this time it was different. This time, giants like Google, Facebook, Amazon were behind it. This time there was infinite money, infinite data, infinite processor power. And this time, something had changed. A new method called neural networks had emerged. These systems that imitated the human brain could learn from data. They could recognize cats by looking at cat photos. They could learn language by looking at millions of sentences. In 2012, a neural network called AlexNet crushed all its competitors in a competition. It was a historic success in the field of image recognition. The scientific world was shocked. Capital began to flow in. Now everyone knew something is coming, but no one could predict it would come this soon. Chapter 2. OpenAI's birth. In late 2015, in a dim restaurant in San Francisco, a small group gathered. Among them were Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, and several other visionaries. On the table lay laptops, notes, and the silence filled with endless fear. Elon Musk leaned forward and spoke slowly. If Google develops artificial general intelligence and it falls into the wrong hands, humanity ends. The room became even quieter. At that time, Google was taking giant steps in the field of artificial intelligence. It had bought DeepMind. AlphaGo had defeated the world champion in the game of Go, a success that even experts thought impossible for another 10 years. Artificial intelligence was no longer just a research topic. It had become a power struggle. And Musk was afraid. Because artificial general intelligence, that is, an artificial intelligence that thinks, learns, and plans like a human, could be the last invention humanity creates. If used wrongly, it could lead to disaster. That evening, a decision was made. We will establish an artificial intelligence organization for humanity. It will not be for profit. It will be open source, and its purpose will be singular, to benefit humanity. Thus, OpenAI was born. The beginning was idealistic. $1 billion in donations was collected. The world's brightest artificial intelligence researchers were hired. The office was in San Francisco's Mission District, in a simple and modest building. The walls were white. The desks were minimalist. Everyone had one goal: make artificial intelligence safe. But reality is never as clean as ideals. In the first years, OpenAI dealt with small projects. They trained robots. They created algorithms that played Atari games. But their eyes always looked at a bigger goal: general artificial intelligence. In 2017, an article from the Google Brain team changed everything. Its title was simple: Attention is all you need. This article described a new artificial intelligence architecture called Transformer. And this architecture would take language models to a completely different level. OpenAI caught this idea and started running. In 2018, GPT-1 came out. And finally, something emerges: an intelligence built on language. But an important warning must be made here. ChatGPT doesn't really understand. When it tells you something, it responds not because it knows that information, but because it has seen word patterns representing that information. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, but in both cases it speaks with the same confidence. This makes it both powerful and dangerous. And now, let's look at the hidden cost. Chapter 4. The hidden price of intelligence. In a town in Oregon, people started worrying about water being cut off. Faucets were running weak, gardens were drying up, children were waiting in line to get into swimming pools. So what was the problem? The massive Google data center at the edge of town. Artificial intelligence systems like ChatGPT are invisible. There is a simple interface on your phone, on your computer, but in the background, massive data centers around the world are burning. And these centers consume an incredible amount of resources. One ChatGPT query consumes on average 1 glass of water. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? But it's true. Because the processors in data centers generate enormous heat when working. Massive cooling systems are used to cool this heat. And these systems consume water. Tons of water. According to one estimate, Google's all data centers consume 15 billion liters of water per year. For Microsoft's data centers, this figure is even higher. And the artificial intelligence explosion multiplied this consumption. But water is only the beginning. Electricity consumption is at astronomical levels. The electricity spent to train ChatGPT is more than the annual consumption of several thousand families. And the system processes millions of queries every day. Coal plants are running. Natural gas is being burned, carbon emissions are increasing, researchers are warning. The artificial intelligence industry could become one of the biggest obstacles in the fight against the climate crisis. But no one can stop it, because the competition is too ruthless. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, all are in the artificial intelligence race. Whoever makes a bigger model, whoever shows better performance, wins. And this race is billing the planet. Imagine inside a data center. Endless corridors. Thousands of server racks. Each rack is blowing and cooling like a giant refrigerator. Lights are flashing. The noise is deafening.
And these centers always work. They never close, day and night, uninterrupted. And because when you ask ChatGPT a question, millions of calculations are being made for you. And these calculations have a physical cost. But you look at your screen and then only see the words. You don't see the cost. Chapter 5, The Data and Ethics War. In the spring of 2023, in a courtroom in New York, a historic case began. The New York Times sued OpenAI. The accusation was clear. Copyright infringement. You use millions of our articles without permission to train ChatGPT. The hall was filled with tension. Lawyers, journalists, technology analysts were all there. Because this case could determine the future of artificial intelligence. OpenAI's defense was simple. We used it for training. This falls under fair use. But the New York Times' argument was strong. You stole our labor, and now you're producing content similar to the news we wrote. Thus, we're losing our readers. And it was really so. If ChatGPT can give you a news summary, why would you go to the New York Times' site and read it? This wasn't just a newspaper case. Writers, musicians, illustrators, programmers, everyone was asking the same question. Is artificial intelligence stealing my labor? Because everything ChatGPT learned came from content created by people. Books, articles, forums, blogs, social media posts, billions of pages. And most of this content was taken without permission. OpenAI's response was pragmatic. Open data on the internet belongs to everyone. We only learn from them. But artists, writers angrily objected. No, our work, our labor. You can't put this inside a machine and make money. Cases multiplied. Visual artists sued Stable Diffusion, Midjourney. Musicians objected to artificial intelligence music generators. Software developers started a class action lawsuit against GitHub Copilot. And the ethical question became clear. Is artificial intelligence killing human creativity? Some said, no, this is a tool. We can also become more powerful by using this tool. Some said, yes, this is theft. And in the end, real creativity will die. Because no one will make the effort. Both were right. And both were wrong because the truth was more complex. ChatGPT couldn't write as well as a writer, but it could write a student's homework. It couldn't draw as well as an artist, but it could design an advertisement poster. It couldn't write code as well as a programmer, but it could automate simple functions. And this was enough, because most of the time, good enough was the enemy of perfect. Employers began to think, why should I pay money to a writer? ChatGPT can do the same for free. And so, the first jobs began to be lost. Chapter 6, Artificial Intelligence Seeping into Life. Sarah was a 19-year-old university student. She was studying in the literature department and had to write an essay every week. But that week, she didn't have time. She had gone to parties, hung out with friends, postponed studying. The last day came. Sarah sat at her computer, opened ChatGPT and wrote, "Write me a 1,000-word analysis on Kafka's Metamorphosis novel." 30 seconds later, the essay was ready. Sarah didn't even read it. She copied, pasted, sent, and got a full grade. Her professor was impressed by the quality of the writing. "Sarah, this is a great analysis. You really thought about it," he had noted. But Sarah hadn't written a single word of it. This became the story of millions of students. Universities were in panic. Professors could no longer distinguish who really wrote, who used artificial intelligence. Detector software was developed, but ChatGPT was smarter. It had learned to hide itself. The education system was collapsing because the basic assumption students will learn by their own efforts was no longer valid. But students weren't alone. Dr. James was a 45-year-old surgeon. Every day he dealt with patients, performed operations, wrote reports, but he was tired.
Bureaucratic work was keeping him from his actual job. One day, a colleague showed him ChatGPT.
Look, he said, it can automatically write patient reports. Dr. James looked skeptically,
But he tried, and his life changed. Now he was writing reports in minutes. He was entering patient information. ChatGPT was preparing a professional report in medical terminology. Dr. James was checking, correcting, sending. He saved time. He could see more patients. But one day, he made a mistake. He didn't check a drug dosage that ChatGPT wrote, and it was wrong. The patient wasn't harmed, but could have been. Dr. James stayed awake that night. Can I trust this machine? He asked himself, and he couldn't find an answer.
but artificial intelligence wasn't just helping. Sometimes it was causing harm.
In India, a fraudster was writing fake banking emails using ChatGPT. The language was perfect. The grammar was flawless. And thousands of people were deceived. In Russia, propaganda machines were producing fake news using ChatGPT. News that looked real, but was completely fabricated, and it was spreading on social media. In America, politicians were creating fake videos, fake audio recordings with artificial intelligence to defame their rivals, to manipulate elections. Reality was becoming blurred. Now you couldn't trust a photo, a video, an audio recording, because everything could be fake.
And the worst part, finding the truth was becoming almost impossible.
Now let's imagine two futures. The first, utopia. In the year 2030, the world had changed, but in a good way. Artificial intelligence had increased the speed of science tenfold. Breakthrough discoveries had been made in cancer treatment. Diseases like Alzheimer's had been solved. Artificial intelligence was analyzing millions of molecules, reducing the drug development process from years to months. Education had undergone a revolution. Now every child had a personal teacher. Artificial intelligence supported, patient, never tiring, poor or rich, everyone was receiving the same quality education. The climate crisis had slowed down. Artificial intelligence had optimized energy systems. Wind turbines, solar panels, all were working more efficiently.
Carbon emissions were falling.
Scientists were working together with artificial intelligence. Humans were providing creativity, artificial intelligence, computational power. Together, they were creating miracles. Jobs had been lost, yes, but new jobs had been born. Artificial intelligence trainers, ethics auditors. Now, I ask you, what do you think? Will artificial intelligence save humanity or will it destroy it? How are you using ChatGPT? Are you afraid of it or are you excited? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because this debate is perhaps the most important debate in human history. If this video made you think, don't forget to like and subscribe. On the DR Stories channel, we tell the world's greatest stories, its deepest truths. See you in the next video. And remember, the future is still in our hands. Or is it?